The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real-life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to Chasing Giants, brought to you by Osseo Gear, episode 161, live at our last masterclass of 2023. Don, we got a full house.
We do. I was counting people earlier, and they were moving around, so I didn't get an accurate count, but there's over 40 here. I got 43, and there might be a couple more that I missed. So.
Don't look at the boy from Kentucky. I'd have to take my shoes off to do that.
Yeah, you'd run out of toes. Huh?
Yeah, there we go. Real quick, we got some VIP people in the room tonight. A couple of them were here last week, but I think you need to introduce them again. So.
Yep, I got my parents back here. If you guys want to wave.
Oh, you got to clap for Mr. Higgins. He enjoys that.
My grandson Walker's back there. He went to the house. My wife Robin was back there.
At least you didn't wait till the end. At least you didn't wait till the end for her to introduce her this week.
Yeah, that's probably why she left. She didn't want everybody clapping for her. Alan Foster, my mentor from many years ago, he's at the back. A good friend of mine, Henry Hortenstein. We've been buddies since we was knee-high to a grasshopper, and the stories we could tell. Joe Johnson, the Joey Buck. Joe's here.
The shed hunting machine. He was on the lease today for 30 seconds and found a shed. I would have walked right past it. Him and Al saw it as soon as we stepped in the field.
Yep. The mailman, Steven, is here. You guys probably heard me talk about him on the podcast. My buddy Justin Nice back here, he does not want any attention. I know he's the guy that mounted these two bucks here, the top two. He rebuilt the antlers on this bottom one after it got dropped and shattered last summer.
Those are reproductions for everybody.
Yeah.
The real ones are in the house.
But so I think that takes care of everybody.
And we got Justin Roach, the president of QuietKat here tonight.
Absolutely.
He's going to have a segment for us about QuietKat, talking a little bit about the company and answering questions specific to QuietKat. So I'm excited about that. They got some new models. We just got a new bike in last week that we're going to be driving out. It's the Apex Pro. Excited about that. So anyway, I think we're going to have a good show.
No doubt about it. If these guys got some good questions, they know that they can throw anything out there.
Well, the first question's always hard to get going, but we usually start talking about something, and we've had a lot of people pushing us to bring back the best and worst, and we were talking about that today. What do you think? Are we going to do that?
I don't know. What do you guys think? You like the best and the worst of what I see on the internet every week? The problem is it's easy for me to find the worst. It's hard for me to find the best sometimes. But if you guys like it, maybe we'll do it.
Well, I'll tee it up for one of the worst that we had, and that is three times this last week. Real World received requests for people asking for military discounts that never served in the military. Can you believe that people would actually go to that low to fake that they served our country just to get a discount? And
you want to make a guess on who they voted for in the last election? I can guarantee it.
All right. Well, while we're waiting, we got a couple people lined up for questions. This is the last master class. We let people do a little bit of shed hunting on Thursday. Mm-hmm. And my question to you, with all of these people sitting here looking at you today, are you gonna turn them loose in a switchgrass field to shed hunt it tomorrow? That's the question.
You guys want to shed hunt tomorrow?
We just got a bunch of smiles on people's faces.
Yep. I've got two switchgrass fields that if we all lined up, we could cover that pretty easy.
So if you guys are following the Chase for 200 on the Whitetail Master Academy, that buck's antlers is out there somewhere, and you'd really like to have them.
I would.
So if the wind's right after the class tomorrow night, we're going to burn, but I'm a little worried based on the forecast. Unless the weatherman is really wrong, it's going to be tough to burn tomorrow.
I don't think the burn is going to happen, but the odds of that buck shed antlers being out there are really good, because about a week to 10 days ago, I got his picture right here, and he had one antler. He'd shed one side but not the other, so good chance maybe we'll find one of those or both.
So instead of doing a burn tomorrow, we might be doing a big old shed hunt before everybody leaves. So I want to see Justin take one of these QuietKat bikes and try to hit that switchgrass field at about 30 miles an hour. What do you think? Can you get okay. You'll do stunts too, right? No. Only the little ones.
With your captive herd, did you ever notice the buck fawns that didn't have a twin to be bigger?
I did not. Nope.
They were always the same twins or not?
Well, I wouldn't say it was always the same. I think it was the genetics basically influenced how big they got. I don't think nutrition was ever a limiting factor in the pen like it can be in the wild. So, no, I never did notice that in the pen. Now, a good question would be if Dr. Strickland was here, if he had any research on that in the wild. And I have no insight into that whatsoever.
So if you have you gone and bought Dr. Strickland's book on Amazon? Highly recommend doing that. It basically talks about breaking through the glass ceiling through management, and he talks a lot about fetal programming is going to create the glass ceiling of what the top end of what that buck genetically could ever produce. Then our job is to create nutrition to allow them to get it to that point. So when my mom and dad conceived me, it was never going to be a 7'2" skinny guy. Instead, they got a 6'1" fat guy. So that's nutrition played a big part in that with Little Debbie's, but in the wild, it very well possibly could. We'll tee that up for Dr. Strickland next time we're on. Mm-hmm. Submit that for a question online, and we'll keep it in the files. Good question, though. All right, go ahead.
I got two questions here. First question is, how long were you hunting before you got to the point where you realized that each individual buck has a different personality, and what happened in your hunting career that made you realize that?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say I was probably hunting at least 25 years or more. And to be honest, when the light switch really went off on bucks having different personalities would have been 2017 when I shot Smokey and Trump, because those deer were about as far apart and different as any two bucks I'd ever seen, and I was chasing both those bucks at the same time, and I had two totally different approaches to killing each one of them. So I kind of recognized it before that, but in 2017 is when it really hit home because of those two bucks at the same time that were so different.
There was a question. I'm going to interrupt you, but this is kind of an interesting spin. The question was raised on the farm tour Thursday. You were walking around talking about how much Smokey liked to bed in switchgrass. Mm-hmm. And somebody asked you on the tour, do you think that's why he maybe stayed here, because you have the only switchgrass around? And I think you kind of started shaking your head a little bit on that one.
Yeah, I'd never thought of that, and that's very possible, because he was a buck that was here year-round. It didn't matter what month it was. He was on this farm. He didn't even go spend his time in a bachelor group with other deer. He just stayed here. He's the only buck in the 30-some years I've been managing this property that's done that, though.
But I think whether that's true or not, it falls back into whether we're going to have diversity in food source and cover. Mm-hmm. The more diversity you have, the more you appeal to all of these different wants of bucks with different personalities, instead of just having a monoculture of only one thing on your property, whether it's food or cover.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, thank you. So the second question is not related to deer hunting, but I don't think I've ever heard this on the podcast, and I've listened to everyone at least once or twice. The question is, where and when did you guys meet your wives? And how long have you been married?
Oh boy, you're going to make me. Oh boy.
You go first. I need to think about this. No, I met my wife basically cruising down back in the day, you know, when you used to cruise the streets. I was in Shelbyville one evening and met my wife there. And we've been married 34 years this September, right? Oh. Shoo. It'll be safe to go in the house tonight.
I've been married 22 years, dated my wife for about almost 4 years before we got married. Mine's a little bit of a comical story. The company I work for today, I started working there when I was 18, or just turned 19, and I worked out in the factory floor as a temp, actually painting lines, the yellow safety lines on the floor. And she was working as a summer intern there too. And we had never met each other, but we only lived like 2 miles apart out in the country. I moved there to that area after high school. And we went to leave work one day, and she drove this little Mitsubishi Eclipse Turbo. And she was in front of me, and I was in a hurry, and she started getting freaked out because I was right on her bumper. She wouldn't get out of my way. And we jumped on the interstate, and she started driving faster and faster, but it wasn't fast enough for me, so I was still on her bumper, and we were running about 110 down I-75, and she was getting really upset and freaked out because some weird guy that worked in the factory was following her home. So she got off an exit early, which just happened to be the exit that I was getting off of, and made 3 turns onto country roads, which just happened to be the country roads I was going on, and ended up pulling into some house or whatever, and I flew by her. And when I saw her the next day at work, I said, I don't care how fast you go, you need to get out of the way. And she, to that point, had thought that I was stalking her. So that's our story. I just follow them home. That's my advice for you when you're young. Just follow them home.
Nice to meet all you guys. I think we all have the same terrible disease here, and that is that we're all about managing whitetails, growing them, and eventually harvesting the biggest, most mature buck that's on our properties. That's why we're here right now, right? I mean, it's definitely, it's an infectious disease, and it's something that just keeps getting worse and worse every year. And that's really the reason why my brother and I started QuietKat. It was about intrusion. It was about getting in and out of your properties quietly, effectively, no scent, no disruption. And that was back in 2012, and here we are in 2023. So I prepared a slideshow to give you guys just an overview of the company. And then if there's any questions any of you guys have, you know, I'm here live. We can chat about, you know, what do you use it for, this or that, whether it's for hunting, whether it's for run and gun type turkey hunting, whether it's for scouting, all the above. So bear with me here for a second. So the first couple slides here are just kind of nice imagery type shots here. Obviously, you know, the electric, bike is something that you may use it for hunting, but then you find that you're using it for a lot of things. You know, whether it's weekend warrior, whether it's another vehicle for for transportation, commuting back and forth to work, or going to your town to grab milk and eggs, pizza. So what's our mission? And when my brother and I, Jake is my brother, when we started the company, it was really to build the most robust, capable e-bike in the outdoors to really replace or substitute a UTV, ATV. You know, easily transportable. You can put it in the back of your truck. You can you can put it on a bike rack. So really transportable. You can ship them. If you're going out west, you can ship them easily, UPS to wherever you're going, etc. That was the basis of when we were building and designing the product. So just kind of like who we are. We started the company in 2012. We launched our first product in 2013. We're located right in the center of Colorado, so up in the mountains. So my back door is my test ground. So really, around here and, in Wisconsin or Indiana or Kentucky, there's some areas that have some decent hills, but where we are, we got really big hills for testing. Obviously, you can use it for hunting, fishing, overlanding, commuting. Really, you find that you use it a lot. So back in May of 2021, we were lucky enough to build a company, kind of the entrepreneur's dream, and we sold it to a larger company. The company that a lot of you guys probably know, it's called Vista Outdoor, and they own Federal Ammunition and Remington and Bushnell and Primos and Sims Fishing and Fox Racing and Camelback Hydration, all different. They have about 48 brands that they own. But they bought us, and we still are there running the company and doing all the day-to-day and continue to make sure that the right people are on the bikes, people like us. For whitetail hunting. I mean, really, Jake and I built this thing for whitetail hunting because that's what we are. We're hardcore whitetail hunters, like most of you guys in the room here, just wanting to figure out how to get one better edge of trying to outsmart these guys. We also produce QuietKat produces the Jeep bike. When we first started kind of getting some momentum, we actually were in the Super Bowl with Jeep. I don't know if you guys remember the Bill Murray Groundhog Day commercial. So that was a pretty fun event that we were able to partake in. Obviously, you can buy them in a bunch of different places like Shields and Bass Pro. Don, actually, through his, we've been a partner with Don, and he uses the bike a lot, and he swears by them in certain areas, and so we get a lot of people, like some of his class that are buying the bike. So we buy them, sell them a lot, and direct to consumer as well. So a lot of people are like, well, how big is that market? The market, back in 2018, the market on a global side was like a $26 billion industry. And now it's about a $60 billion industry. So the e-bike space has just blown up. And it's just technology all came together when it comes to capable mountain bike components, the batteries, right? Lithium ion batteries, electric cars, right, have really helped pave that way. And the engines. So all kind of came together. In the next 10 years, they're forecasting that 15% of the adult population in the United States will own an e-bike. So it's just a big space. It's kind of a cool space. It's new. QuietKat is, the one of many different bikes, electric bikes out there. There's, all kinds of competitors. What sets us apart is that we really focus on the outdoor recreational space, right? So getting off the path, going out there further, whether it's the back 40 or if it's in the back country, either one, but just really focusing on the, getting out there, going further, and purposely building the product for that exact purpose. Just a couple cool images, kind of like in space, whether it's fishing or hunting or overlanding or commuting. And one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is we're constantly on top of innovation. When we started in 2012, I'd be riding by somebody, and they'd be turning their head like, what just happened? That guy just went flying by me, and I was pedaling as hard as I could. And little did they know I was on an electric bike. And now, fast forward today, the innovation that's in the bikes is light years ahead of where it was in 2012. And then if you fast forward another 5 years from now, it's going to continue to innovate. A lot of the innovation is going to be in the engine and the batteries. One of the things with us being a large conglomerate company allows us to have the bandwidth to make sure that we're always on top of, leading the way in innovation. Obviously, if you want to run a good company, just like Don with his master classes and with his seed company that he has, you have to have good customer service, right? You have to make sure you treat all your people, all your clients and all your customers top notch, and that's something that's really important just across the board. That's something that we do as well. Just a quick breakdown on an e-bike. A lot of people are, wonder how an e-bike is. It's got a, really end of the day, it's a mountain bike component. You can pedal the pedals, And as you pedal the pedals, it actually engages the engine, and then so it assists you in a big way. You can also use a thumb throttle, which is, if you look at this bike right up here, it's right here, so it's almost more like like a motorcycle where you don't even have to pedal. Generally, when you're using the bike, you're kind of doing a combination of both. So it has all the components of the bike, of a normal mountain bike, with regards to the derailleur, which is this piece on the backside here, where you can shift in the gears from, one, which one would be like a high speed, low torque, all the way up to, 9, which would be more low speed, high torque when you're climbing really steep hills. But really the main, focus on an e-bike is really the battery in combination with the motor that sits right there in the center of the bike, and then you're using your pedals and your throttle to move. Here's just a couple samples of some of our bikes that we have. So this is a new bike we launched not too long ago called the Rubicon. It's part of the Jeep family. It's a full suspension bike. You can see right in the center of the right above the motor there. You can see that full suspension and the rear suspension. So it's like a Cadillac. You just it has a full, it floats about 6 inches of travel up and down as you're going over your terrain. So there's the original Jeep bike that's still one of our top sellers. We've got an Ibex that just came out. That's a 2023 product right there. The Apex Pro, that's the one that you see right here that is right up here. More of a utility focused. You got the big rack system. You can load the rack up with all kinds of bags and pannier bags, racks to be able to take your gear in and out. Trailers. So the Sport is just a lower version. Basically it's kind of like an S model and a performance model. So the Sport is just a step down of the Pro. And then a Ranger is more of our entry level type product. Still fully capable, just a little bit little better on the pocketbook. It uses a little bit lesser technology. If you look at the Ranger there, you can see in that photo, the engine is actually in the rear wheel. It has some benefits, but where it's a direct drive. So let's say that you were to snap your chain, which can happen, doesn't happen very often. It would still work. It's direct drive to the tire, where the center, where the apex here, you can see the engine's right in the center of the bike. It's actually a little more capable. It's got higher torque. It will go faster, and it uses the gearing of the bike to pedal. So a lot of people will ask, well, what's the difference? Which one would I want if I wanted to get one? It really kind of depends on the terrain that you're in. If you're whitetail hunting here in flatter areas like Illinois or like Kentucky or Indiana or Missouri or Kansas, you can get away with the mid drive. The rear hub drive one all day long. When you start to get into areas more like out west, where you're going to have some really, really big terrain changes, that's when you really want to make sure you're focusing on a little bit more of a mid-drive engine system. So the Pioneer is actually just a downgraded, it's a single-speed version of the Ranger. And here's more of some of our urban bikes. That's about it.
So tying all this together with the plans that you're going to see tomorrow, I'm going to ask Don to come up here, and I told him what would be a cool story if he started a simple Q&A with the reason that he first got a QuietKat bike on this farm, because you're all going to see this tomorrow when we walk around to these stand sites. So I'm going to ask Don to do that, and then we'll open it up for questions, and then to end it, we'll give this promotion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to share my QuietKat story, if you will, I think most of you that follow the podcast know that I pretty much tell it like it is. I don't sugarcoat much. And that's the story you're going to get here. You know, about 8 or 10 years ago, I started seeing magazine ads for QuietKat bikes. And right out of the gate, I thought, man, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Why would a deer hunter want a bicycle? And then a good friend of mine, Brad Davis, I don't know, some of you local guys might know Brad. He's from over by Matt too. He's the big buck killer. And he had one of these bikes. And he was telling me what a game changer it was. And I respect Brad, and I knew he wouldn't just tell me that if it wasn't true. So I actually got one, and he was right. I use it more than I ever thought I would. The advantages are just, it's a long list. You're not leaving ground scent. You can get to your stand a whole lot quieter. It can go places an ATV won't. And the list just goes on and on. One of the big things I like about it is that the deer on my farm got used to seeing my ATV out in places where it shouldn't be. And if I was hunting in a stand, I'd park my ATV out a couple 100 yards away, or maybe even 300 or 400 yards away. But if those deer seen that ATV sitting out there, the does would start blowing at it and stomping, and they'd run back into the cover. They knew that I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. But with this bike, I could just lay it over in the corn stalks or drive it right up to the base of my tree and lay it over there, and you don't have that issue anymore. That's kind of my story in a nutshell. Any questions you guys got on, how I use it or anything like that, I'd be glad to answer them.
Why is the throttle on the left? We're all trained to ride ATVs and the throttle's on the right. You get on this and
I get that question a lot because all your gearing is on the right. And
you switch those?
you could.
Can you switch those?
Oh, can I?
Like to build it that way?
Yep. This is how we do it, and you get used to it. Now, if someone is really, really particular and want to do it, you could literally just swap them. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way that we've done it, and that's the way the industry has kind of built to go this direction, where the throttle's always on the left-hand side. But if it was something where you were like, I really want to have all my gearing on the left and my throttle on the right, just like my ATV or my motorcycle, you can do that.
One story I just thought of, I'll share with you. When Mel was the year that he grew this rack, and he was in velvet, I was trying to get video footage of him in velvet. There was one spot that I was, watching a bean field every evening. And to get that bean field, to get to the back of it, was over a half a mile off the road. And those beans were planted on 30-inch rows. I could actually drive that QuietKat through that bean field. And the beans were as tall as the handlebars on that, but I wasn't tearing up the beans whatsoever. I don't think I destroyed a bean plant getting to the back of that field. Drove that bike right down the 30-inch rows. You could never do that with an ATV. It saved this old guy a lot of walking on a lot of hot summer evenings. So that's just one use. Use it in the summer for trail cameras, getting back into places that maybe are growed up and you can't get an ATV real easy, narrow paths, whatever. Just a couple of ways I use it. Yep.
What is the range of the QuietKat bike for the base model and your best model? What's the range difference, and what is the range if you're using pedal assist?
This gentleman was asking what the range is on the e-bike and what the range is from the base model all the way up to the higher end models. So the range is really a formula based on the amount of the output and the size of your battery. That's really the basis of it. And so if you were to go to the base model, that battery is smaller than our larger models. There's a lot of the cost of the bike is into the battery, right? It's like your lithium-ion phone battery, the battery there. So that's the difference. Now, with regards to your question on the range, it really depends on, have you ever been in a Tesla, an electric car? Well, if you ride it flat, you'll go 350 miles. But if you go up and over a bunch of big hills, you're gonna go 150 miles. So it's pretty similar on that. But to give you an average, say in this type of country around here, our base models are probably gonna go about 20 miles before you need to charge, and our higher end ones will go up to 60 miles. Now, your third question was, what if I help it? If you put it on like power level 2, you're gonna triple that. You can go 100 miles. And so that's when if any of you guys follow e-bikes or do any of that, you get some people that actually will market that. Like, yeah, I'll go 100 miles. It's in power level 1 while I'm pedaling on flat ground. But the fact is that the technology has come a long ways and they work really, really well. 20 miles is a long time. I'll charge my bike. So I hunt about 2 to 2.5 hours, kind of northwest of here. And so, that's really my passion. That's why I'm here, for tonight and really tomorrow, is to learn as much as I can about, how to make my odds even just that much better. But I'll charge that thing every 2 days. It can't hurt to charge it either, because that battery is going to last 1,000 cycles. So it's going to last a long time. Yep.
I'll throw out another way that I use that bike. I've got a little bit of notoriety in the area for shooting big deer, and I don't like leaving my truck a lot of places where I'm hunting. Well, I can park my truck anywhere on the road, have the bike in the back, throw it down, and I can go 5 miles down the road to where I'm actually hunting. Everybody thinks I'm hunting over there 5 miles away, but I'm jumping on that bike in the dark before daylight and riding it to where I'm really hunting. That's the way I use it. One more note to throw out though is, Justin listed a bunch of retailers that sell these bikes. I would suggest you buy them direct, because you can talk to someone right there at the company that can advise you on the best model for you and your situation. So instead of just going to Shields or whatever. And the other thing is, I don't think that discount applies to all those retail outlets, does it?
No, it's
Okay, that's what I thought.
It's a Don Higgins special deal.
Right. So you're way better to buy those direct, just to make sure you get the model that best suits your situation. Any other questions on the bike? Yeah, Steve?
What's the maintenance on a bike like that?
So you want to maintain it like you do any bike. If you're a biker, it's really easy to maintain. If you're not a biker, there isn't a bike shop that isn't maintaining e-bikes today, because if they're not, they're kind of out of business. So it's fairly easy to maintain them. Generally, you want to keep the gearing lubed. So with like a non-scented oil or something along those lines. If you rode it yesterday, it was muddy as heck, right? And you get this thing fully caked in mud, wash it off. Just kind of like wash it off. It doesn't take much, but you don't want that stuff to dry and get in there, and then it firms up into the famous Illinois cement, and then you start riding, it just kind of loosens things up a little bit. But it's rugged. I mean, our bikes are purposely built for that. I mean, that's the part of the design and development that we do, is to make sure that how we're building them is capable of taking a lot of wear and tear.
Do you have a question now?
No, you answered it.
Okay, let's get to you over here. Okay.
Battery maintenance? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so like I was answering him, you don't have to really worry about not charging it. I mean, again, when I'm in Illinois, I'll charge it every couple of days just because it's still got so much power. But you can charge it every day if you wanted to, because 1,000 cycles is a lot of daily charges, right? Now, what you don't want to do with a battery is you don't want to charge it when it's freezing. So typically, when I charge it, I usually have 2 batteries, because they pop in and out really easily. Pop, right? If you had an extra one, you pop it in, put it, and this thing kind of lives on my truck, really, and I just pop it in, take the battery out, charge it in a room, like at if like this type of temperature in your garage. You just don't want to charge anything lithium when it's freezing. It's really unhealthy for the battery. Yep.
If the battery
So it's interesting. You can, let's say that it's dead and you want to use it, and so you're eating lunch and you just want, because you're going to use it in the afternoon, you'll get about 80% of your charge back in the first 2 hours. It takes about 6 hours to completely charge it. So it's kind of an overnight thing to completely charge it, or a good stint of time, but you'll get a lot of it in the beginning. And then you can get, I think we even sell one, but you can get a larger amperage charger that will speed charge it in 2 hours as well.
What about tire maintenance as far as flats?
Yep, because we found out that we hunt right next to each other.
Oh, really?
So how small is that, right? Like, he's like, I was like, where are you from? He's like, Georgia. I was like, all right. Where do you hunt? Like, about, up in Hancock County. I was like, I know Hancock County. Yeah. Anyways, up there's a lot of locusts, right? Thorny locusts. And so, if you're on a bike, bike tires, and this is basically a bike tire, is pretty thin, you will get a flat. And so we don't manufacture it. There's a liner called a Tannis liner, and it's basically, it's like those pool noodles. It's basically a pool noodle with a tube inside of it. And these guys are, they're blowing up. They've got a great product. But you put a Tannis liner in there, 90, it's self-adhesive, it self-fills, and so it will protect. It's 90% thorn proof. So obviously, I've got we have 10 of them up at my property, and every one of them has Tannis liners in them. Yep. It's almost a must in the Midwest.
Is that something your bike shop can install pretty easy?
Yep. Yeah, you can do it yourself. Our website, we probably have 50 YouTube videos on how to do everything from like maintenance to all these questions you guys are, or at least a lot of the questions are there because they're common questions. But yeah, how to install a Tannis liner. It's not easy. But someone that knows what they're doing will do it in 20 minutes.
How many miles do you expect the motor to last?
The motor. Let's see here. One of my guys that he does all our IT. He's got 5,000 miles on his bike. I think he's gone through 2 batteries. So I think he's on his second battery. But he's on the original, besides like changing out your brake pads and I think he's gone through a couple sets of tires and stuff. The engine is, an electric engine is just a whole bunch of copper. You can blow them out, but it's pretty difficult to blow them out, to basically burn them up. Now, the good thing about our product, and frankly most e-bikes, is that they're component driven. So if you did blow out your motor, you're just going to replace your motor.
That's a lot of trips back and forth to work for me.
Yeah, no, I think it's like 5,000 and change, but he uses it to work too. That's how he does it.
I assume they're sealed, so the moisture doesn't get in.
So we were, what was it, 2 years ago, we were doing a media event up in Hancock County where you are, and we had this guy from Outdoor Life magazine, or the digital part of it, and he was riding his QuietKat and he was on his Onyx, and we're like, listen, when you get to the bottom, and it was really wet 2 years ago, I remember it was really, really wet, spring, and I was like, when you get to the bottom of this hill, make sure you go right, because it's going to go out into a CRP field, and that CRP field is flooded. Anyways, he came back completely drenched. We were turkey hunting. Fully drenched. He literally drove the bike right up to, like, the water was like right up to here. So he submerged the whole thing. Now, and his bike still worked. I was just using that as a point. It's like a car, right? You can drive a car in a rainstorm and through that, but if you submerged it into the lake and you let it sit there, you will eventually short it out. So same type of thing. But yeah, but things are sealed. Yeah. So appreciate you guys kind of taking the time to listen outside of big whitetails and what we're really here for. But if you have any questions, I'm going to be here all day tomorrow as well, listening in.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, I've got a couple clover plots to redo this year, and I was wanting to know what you or Dwayne would suggest to put in as kind of a cover crop to get that clover established.
We're going to make Dwayne start making his way over to the microphone to answer this one.
Dwayne can advise you better than anyone here, so we're going to let
you
the
have
expert
you have
handle
one of
that
the best resources in the entire country for this one.
He's the guy that I call when I got a question about food plots.
Tip that thing down a little bit. There you go.
Okay. So a question would be, you're going to terminate it and you move on to something else, or
Redo the clover plots, just a step.
and you want to stay with clover then?
Yes.
Okay.
Start over.
All right. So we're going to replace clover with clover. And I don't know if you've got a recent soil sample. If you don't, I'd encourage that. That's the foundation. Okay. If someone else is doing the same thing, get that soil sample. That'll be the best money you spend. $20. It'll either save you money or it'll make you a better food plot. So I do a good soil prep. Start as clean as you can, and don't scrimp on the seed. And that's not a sales pitch, but the more seed per square foot you put down, the less opportunity there is for weeds and undesirables to show up.
Hey, Dwayne, I'm looking out over a mature clover plot, and I need to decide whether I'm going to spray it, kill it, restart, or just frost seed it and throw the seed to it with whatever fertilizer. What percentage of grass versus clover am I looking at to say throw more seed to it and keep it mowed versus terminate the whole thing and start over?
I think there's probably two questions or answers to that question, Terry. If you're in an area that you can till up and start over again, if you've got 40% grass, you could probably tear it up, and start all over 50%. But what I like to do, and in areas where maybe you can't get equipment in, or you don't have equipment, I'm a big fan of frost seeding clovers every year. I think, and we had this conversation earlier tonight, I don't think you can afford not to put down at least 3 pounds of clover every year on a clover food plot. You're going to have plant mortality every year. You can't help it. And you can frost seed that in January, February. That stuff's resilient. It's going to lay there until it comes time to grow. And it'll sprout. It'll fill in the blanks. You'll crowd out the grasses or the undesirables as such. If you wait till May 10th and walk out there to check it out and start scratching your head and say, well, I've got all these problems, it's complicated. You're going to have a no-till drill, and you're going to have clover growing. It's just complicated. So don't be afraid to frost seed. 3 pounds isn't much. It'll fix a lot of problems. So beyond that, then to Terry's question about the grass, there are some good chemistries out there. Is it quinclorac? Is that what we're using for grass on the real world selling?
No,
clethodim.
Clethodim.
I'm sorry. So we're using that for grass. The mower that you've got at home, as long as you can mow the top, give the clover a haircut on the top, knock all those weeds and grasses off, let the clover come on through there, and that's another good tool as well.
Okay, somebody's asking if we put a cover crop in with your clover.
Okay, so I probably wouldn't. I don't think it'll hurt it as long as you don't get the cover crop so thick that the clover competes with it. But by starting clean. Okay. So if you needed to put a cover crop down for seeding purposes, basically to bulk up the clover so you can gauge the seeding setting a little bit better. I'd use a bushel of oats, and most every form of a seeder has a setting for oats on it. So put your oats in. If you want 32 pounds to the acre, that's a bushel. Go ahead and make it maybe 31 or 32, 33. Use that as your guide. That 10 pounds of clover you put in is going to find its way out. So what I don't think you want to do is take the 32-pound bushel and add another 10 pounds or change your setting for 42 pounds to the acre. Leave it at 32 pounds the acre.
I'm glad he's answering this question. And
Me
not
too.
Me.
When's your ideal
So, okay, so ideal planting date for clovers, I think I touched base on frost seeding. You can't be too early. And then if you're going to start over from scratch, it's the first chance you can get out there to make a seed bed and prep it. If you get that little window in February or March, go ahead and get it ready and put it down. If it's April 10th, go ahead and put it down. May 10th, we start getting nervous, and by the 20th of May, you better be done. And it's not that that's too late or that the stuff won't grow, but we've got to make sure that young tender plant's going to survive the summer sun. Make sure there's enough establishment, root development, and canopy to survive the elements that June and July provide for it, offer. That catch it all? Okay.
I got another question.
All right,
Okay.
step back up to the mic. Question 2.
Don, I've got a really nice switchgrass field. This was the second year. So next year I need to burn. I'm kind of in it's about a 3-acre patch, but it's long. And it's about 75 yards wide, but it's really long. Have you ever tried to mow it and then burn it to keep the fire controlled a little better?
I've never tried that, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. I'd keep the mower up. Yeah, keep the mower up about a foot off the ground.
Yeah, that was.
And I think you'll be fine.
No, we didn't have the giant flames because I've got timber next. I've got tree plantings.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't want to get away. It's hard to get a back burn, on just a strip down through there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've watched a lot of videos on it, and I was curious about that. So
It should work for sure.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Especially do that with miscanthus. If you've ever seen miscanthus grow, it wicks like a chimney, so it's hollow. And when you light a strip of that, it sounds like a butane torch, and it'll shoot a flame way up. So if you're in an area like under power lines where you don't want to get flames way up in the air closer to cover, just run it over, cut it with a chainsaw, and get it laid down before you light it. Okay.
Terry, I'd like to go ahead and follow up on that clover question. For those fall annuals, winter annuals that you plant, things like harvest salad or even the soil charge, if they overwinter, you can go ahead and frost seed that clover in on those products and go in and terminate them at a later date. Don't get hung up on the fact you got to terminate that other plot before you can do anything. So failed to mention that.
You think about what you forgot to miss, and then you come back up and finish it, right?
I do that every week. Starting to see a pattern here.
Did you not notice that I edited it and put it right at the end so it didn't? You didn't notice that?
I didn't.
All that work for nothing.
I didn't watch it last week. I saw it live.
All right, thanks, Dwayne. All right, next question.
Hey, Don. Why is it that the indoctrinated youth scream so loud at you about non-native and invasive species when you post about miscanthus, but they're so quiet about the non-native invasive species crossing our border?
I wish I had the answer. Shows how smart they are, doesn't it?
Hey, Don, I'm wondering what you think about how much time deer spend bedding in cornfields. Up by where I hunt is similar to this, and I access a lot of stands with wind blowing out into a cornfield, walking in, into my stand through the corn. And over the years, I feel like I end up bumping, over the years, I've found that I'm bumping more deer in the fields and more deer coming out of the fields than what I would expect.
Yeah, I mean, around here, most of our cornfields are going to be harvested before we get too far into the season. I mean, the harvest around here usually starts in early September, and, a month later, there's not a whole lot left on a typical year. They do bed in the corn some. When I shot Trump, he had been bedded in corn, and he that's where he came from. So it does happen. There's really no good answer. You just, when it's standing, you almost got to treat it like it's cover. Yeah. And that really makes it difficult to hunt because you need some place for your scent to blow. Right. And if you're depending on it blowing out in that open field, and that open field is standing corn, that kind of takes that away. And that's where discipline comes in. I'd almost suggest that you wait until that corn's harvested. And if you own the cornfield, whoever's farming it for you, I'd make sure that you work some deal with them that there's an understanding they get that corn out as quick as they possibly can.
Where are you guys from? Wisconsin. So, Dwayne, how many day corn are they planting in Wisconsin? 100? 9,900? So they're trying to cut at the beginning of October too, if the weather's right. That's the key up there is if the weather makes it to where they can get their beans out and get it switched over to corn.
Yeah, usually like beginning of October towards,
yeah.
I mean, sometimes it'll go through November 15th.
Oof.
Depending upon circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 2 years ago it was really, really wet up there and everybody was doing their corn real late. Yep.
Throw a little side note, Terry. I consulted on their property last year. Yeah. And remember at the end of the year when we reviewed the best properties that I'd seen in the year. I think, weren't you guys like in the top three, one of the top three properties of the year?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
3, 4,
I remember your farm just like it was my own. So it was one of the best ones. I won't mention your name on the podcast, so you won't have to worry about everybody on.
You'll have 35,000 people on Onyx trying to search for you right now.
I appreciate that.
You're not on camera either, so unless they recognize your voice, you're safe.
Yeah,
that's why he's standing so far away from the microphone. He doesn't want it.
Right. One other question for Dwayne. How about, so like right now we still have a couple feet of snow on the ground up there, and I have like clover plots that I'd like to frost seed. So soon what I think will happen is, we'll get, 45-degree days and, nights that don't get down below freezing, where we have this situation where we have a lot of snow still, but the ground's not froze as the snow's melting. What about frost seeding into the snow?
So I don't see a problem frost seeding on the snow as long as it's not 2 foot of snow. We don't want it laying on top of frozen snow where it's got the potential to blow away and end up all in one location or over on the neighbors. If you can get it on that last 2 or 3 inches of snow as it's melting, I think that's great. A lot of the old timers used to try to plant right ahead of the last snow. Now, if we knew when that was, it'd be a lot easier. But so the thing that you're going to experience is this snow starts to get away from you. We're going to see that ground really soggy, and when it's soggy, it's receptive. So when you walk across it and you start to sink in a little bit, we're still okay. So whenever it gets firm enough that you can walk across it and not leave much of a track, or maybe just pick a little bit up on the bottom of your boot, you've probably waited a little too long. So you've still got a window where you're at. So we're probably beyond it here.
Okay. All right. Need the next question. Awkward pause.
Well, for all these people, you would have thought they'd have been lined up.
Everybody's bashful.
Yeah. Oh, here comes the mailman.
This guy has collected. Okay, so here's a challenge. This guy has collected every hat that has ever been made from Real World, Chasing Giants, and Lester's Feet, except he's missing, I just found this out tonight, he's missing the really old rural whitetails with that generic camo.
I got a box of them in my house. See me afterwards.
You told me you threw them away. I was
Robin
almost
will give you the whole box of them.
I just need one.
I can set you up.
You give me plenty of hats throughout the year, though. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
My question for you this evening is, how do you feel about President Trump getting ready to be indicted next week and put in handcuffs?
Oh, nothing surprises me anymore. It's to the point where I don't even watch the news. The news is so biased, and a lot of it's slanted towards the liberal agenda that I don't even watch it anymore. just gives me a bad attitude, and it makes me not want to go out and do anything productive. So I can't even tell you the last time I watched the news. Nothing surprises me, though. It's going to be really interesting. You know, we're just about a year and a half or so away from the next election, and they are absolutely not going to allow Donald Trump to be elected again. He's the biggest thing they fear. You know, I don't know what they might do, assassinate him or what. But
that's getting edited out.
Please don't. We will.
I'm sure analytics looked for that word. So,
well,
YouTube probation again. Here we come.
That's why we need to start posting this on the Whitetail Master Academy website. Then I can say whatever I want when I have two versions.
You say whatever you want now, and I don't edit it out.
You just said you're going to edit this out.
I'll leave it. We don't monetize YouTube anyway, so they don't actually kick us off. So they just warn us.
Well, they're not going to allow Donald Trump to be elected again. They'll do whatever. I mean, they cheated and got away with it once. There is no way he's getting elected again.
Don, if it would guarantee that your target buck hit 200 inches and you would kill it this year, would you fly a Joe Biden flag on your flagpole for a week?
Absolutely not. I'd save that Joe Biden flag for the Code Brown.
That would be Wes Delks' sock for the 2024 consulting season. That was Clint Cross. That's my buddy from Indiana. I've talked about him on the podcast before. He's the one that rebuilds John Deere planters. So if anybody is looking for a John Deere corn planter for food plot, he is your guy. All right.
Another clover question. When would be the best time to cut your clover, the very last time for fall, and at what height?
Clover can be mowed a couple times through the season. As that plant matures, it starts very small and it's a lot of quality there, and we're growing towards quantity. And it's a nice slow slope as it grows, and when it blooms, it goes to reproductive. That is where you have the most quantity and the most quality at the same time. And at that point, it falls down the backside fast. It doesn't take the same slope as it does as it's growing, the same quality in its time. So you should mow it when at first bloom. And I like to mow it. I like to take half, leave half when I mow. So, and to answer your question about the fall, even though it's bloomed and it's fairly tall, I like to go into fall with as much volume as I can. Sure. It's not uncommon for my plots to go in with, at the top of my rubber boots, have that much volume of clover. So it kind of depends on number of times will depend on the growing season.
I think a party gift has just entered the building.
Did you see what just happened? My wife went into the house and grabbed a box of my stuff, and she's walking around the room handing it out, giving it away.
I'm guessing that everybody that leaves here tonight gets a free hat if they want one.
She's been after me to get rid of them hats for 10 years, and she's seen an opportunity, and she ran in there and grabbed the whole box.
I think those hats have made it to Kentucky, been put in storage, and brought back here and put in storage at 2 different houses. I think they've made the circuit.
Anybody that wants a free hat, I guess you go see Robin, and she's going to set you up.
All right, next question.
This question is for Don. If Donald Trump shot an expandable broadhead, would you still vote for him?
We'd have to have a personal talk first, but yeah, I probably would.
All right, so looking at your top 3 bucks there on the stand, just a question. I know there's no way to know, but if you were allowed to feed mineral in Illinois, what do you think those bucks would look like? Do you think they would be different?
That's hard to say. I mean, I don't think it would make a huge difference because we live in some of the richest soil on the planet. And, you know, the plants are going to reflect the soil they're grown in, the nutrient makeup of those plants, and that's going to, you know, pass right on to the deer that feed on those plants. I would guess that it would, if it made any difference at all, it would be just a few inches on these deer. The big question would be is if you could feed that mineral over a period of time, and fetal programming had a chance to have an impact. How much difference would it make on future bucks? 8 to 10 years down the road.
I think where people misconstrued mineral is if it's really a true quality mineral, it's not just about antler development, it's about herd health and keeping parasites down. It just helps, lactation of does. It's not just, everybody always ties everything to the bucks, but a true good mineral does so much more than tries to talk about antler development. That's a piece of it. That's why the captive deer herd people actually feed our stuff. But the overall herd health and being able to fight off illness, disease, and parasites through the process, gut health. We started putting humic acid in there. All of those things is what the mineral base gives us beyond just antler development. Okay.
So this is a question for either one of you, but Don talks about he's not a big advocate of hinge cutting. So, Terry, you just consulted on our farm, it was a week ago or so. Mm-hmm. You know how many cedars are on there. Mm-hmm. Is there something to hinge cutting cedars? Like, how long would that green canopy actually stay green, if you know what I mean? Like, if you actually just hinge cut a bunch of cedars, would that be better cover?
I'm not sure you could hinge cut a conifer and it stay alive. I've never seen that.
We can try it on your place because you got plenty of them.
Well, that's the reason I asked the question. I haven't really tried it.
I think the tree's going to die. When you hinge cut a tree, you're leaving a section of that bark and material to where it still gets nutrients to the top. I'm guessing that if you try to do that, well, you do have them all the way up and down your. Well, you'll see them tomorrow. So there was areas where a pine row of pines going up between the two switchgrass fields, and a couple of those didn't break all the way over that you dropped right here going up the hill. Mm-hmm. You'll see some tomorrow. The tree's dead, and a couple of them are still attached because we had somebody ask if you were hinge cutting the other day. That's the only reason I remember it. I think the thought process is good, saying I'm going to leave green closer to the ground like what we talked about. For thermal cover and bedding, but I don't think you'll be able to leave that tree. I think you're better off dropping it and letting it die, pushing it up into a pile, and we'll sneak in behind it to kill them in the food plot.
Another question I had is, how much of your property is if you go on a percentage, how much of your property is in switchgrass cover versus wooded cover and or food, and do you see a difference in buck to doe ratio as far as, do the bucks tend to bed more in the wooded cover? Do they like to bed in the switchgrass versus do the does like to bed in the wood or the switchgrass? Does the bucks prefer one over the other and the does prefer one over the other in general speaking?
Well, I've got almost equal acreage in wooded cover and switchgrass. Probably 30 acres or maybe a little more in each. And I don't notice, bucks preferring one, does preferring another. What I do notice is that some individual bucks prefer one over the other. A good example is Smokey here. He liked the grass. And I would say probably over 80% of the time he would be bedded in the grass instead of the wooded cover.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And also had a little discussion back here just now. Is your miscanthus planter up for rent? Or is that not a miscanthus planter?
Well, it's actually a tree seedling planter, but I use it for miscanthus too. I just bought the thing, and I probably won't rent it out, but I can tell you where you can buy one.
Yeah, we were just discussing. We thought it was for planting miscanthus.
Yep, that's what it's for. You're going to get to see tomorrow where the installation process is going to happen with a bunch of miscanthus going on this property.
Yep.
You've been pretty for sure about these last few 200-inch deer you shot on your farm. What's your plan for this year's buck?
I mean, what's my odds of killing?
Yeah, how you have a good gut feeling going into it?
Oh, if there's a lot can happen between now and October, and I have no idea if he's going to hit 200 or not hit 200. He's a far cry from it now. He's mid 180s, so he'd have to put on, close to 20 inches to get there. Which somebody asked me what I thought the odds of that was the other day of him actually hitting 200, and I would say probably less than 50% of him hitting 200. But the odds of me killing him, if he is still alive October 1st, and I want to kill him, say he puts on some inches, and there's no reason for me not to want to shoot him, my odds of killing him are going to be really good. I mean, better than 50-50, put it that way.
We don't know if he's going to make 200, but he definitely. You'll see video footage of him tomorrow that we include in the program tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But he has the frame to do it as far as width and height, and he definitely has a lot starting from potential non-typical stuff coming on. That if some of that comes to fruition, he's definitely got a chance at it. He's got a little bit of everything. He's got the frame, the spread, and some non-typical stuff getting ready to get him pretty froggy.
I'll go a step further. If he's still alive October 1st and I want to kill him, he's probably dead. I mean, it's over 80%. He's dead.
What's the difference in CWD and EHD?
CWD is chronic wasting disease. It's a disease that's basically caused by a prion or a misfolded protein, very similar to mad cow disease in cattle, very similar to Alzheimer's in humans. EHD is epizootic hemorrhagic disease. That's a virus, and that virus is spread by a midge gnat. CWD is supposedly 100% fatal, although I've seen some research that they think they can reverse that, particularly with humic acid, changing the pH level in the deer's body. EHD is also very fatal. That happens typically in late summer, early fall, as water sources dry up and the deer are congregated around limited water supplies. The midge gnat that carries the virus actually lays its eggs in the mud around those water sources. And as the deer are congregating there, that's when you have really bad outbreaks of EHD. But one's a virus and one is a misfolded protein or a prion.
And what was the largest captive buck you ever had?
I had one that was, he was right at 300 inches. That would have been the biggest. I had several over 200. I had several over 250. And to be honest, I didn't have all that many and all that bigger ones compared to what a lot of other people have had.
They're raising giant yearlings now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's crazy what they're putting on some of these deer even in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Boy, we're a quiet group. Here we go.
Typically, we go an hour and a half plus on these live events.
Yeah.
But
How long did you hunt public ground before you bought your first farm or bought this farm?
well, this farm was my grandparents' farm. My mom was actually born at the house down the road here that I lived in before we built this new one. So I've been out here my entire life. I started, turning it into a deer farm after my grandparents passed away about 30 years ago. I still hunt public land to this day. In fact, last fall I spent a lot of time on public land. The problem with public land is that today I'm chasing a caliber of buck. I'm chasing the biggest buck I can find, and I don't care if he's on public or private or where he's at, my own farm or a permission property or a lease property or whatever. I want to chase the biggest buck I can find, and those are just pretty darn rare on public land. Most years I'm going to have a number of bucks found that are way bigger than anything I could find on public land that same year. So even though I still spend time looking for those kinds of bucks on public land, I don't spend near as much time hunting there as I once did.
So where I was going with that is in the time you spent when you first started hunting public land, when you first started hunting till now, what's the difference in the ethics and hunters you meet?
Well,
I'm not deleting this part out.
Sadly, hunting ethics is pretty much followed our society in general, and the lack of compassion for other people is just at an all-time low. We got some great, people that treat other people the way they want to be treated. But, on public land last season, for example, I seen probably the worst display of sportsmanship between two deer hunters I ever seen, and almost totally soured me up on hunting public land. It's just a reflection of our society in general. No matter what you get into today, there's going to be good people involved in it, and there's going to be bad people, and hunting on public land is no different.
It doesn't seem like it matters whether it's public land or private. Big deer bring out the worst in a lot of people. We've said it many, many times. It's a sport that we're all passionate about, but boy, does it ruin a lot of relationships. True colors come out with your friends when there's a big deer, don't they?
I thought that was pretty politically correct on my answer.
I'm
didn't I?
very shocked.
I kept from going off.
I'm just shocked.
Yeah.
Did either of you take your wives bow hunting before you got married or after?
I did. I took my wife elk hunting in Colorado before we was married, and we got lost one day and separated. And
I haven't heard this story.
Yeah, I was running around hollering for her and finally found her. Yeah, she's been deer hunting with me before we was married and after. So she has no interest in doing it herself, but she's went with me a number of times.
Once. That was enough for both of us. I'm married to a saint, but she is not interested in setting outside and a tree stand or a blind. Not her thing. Justin's got another one. Here he goes.
Yeah. Say this was your last season. What would you like to leave behind and get from the season and just leave behind in the industry?
Oh, the Higgins legacy. That's an interesting question.
Well, I hope, if anything, that the folks that follow me have come to realize that I try to keep my priorities in order, and I'd like to, have everybody that follows me think about, their priorities and if they have them in order. Right back here is my parents, my wife, and my grandson, and they all mean more to me than deer hunting, and I hope everyone else here feels the same way about their families. And Terry said it earlier, big deer make people do stupid things, and when I was younger, big deer probably made me do stupid things. And, I hope that those that follow me recognize that that's not the case today, and I've got my priorities in order. I've tried to, treat other deer hunters the way I want to be treated. I walked away from more than one property I had permission to hunt. When I got permission, I found out somebody was already there. And yet I don't think anybody has ever shown me the same respect. In fact, it's just the opposite. If somebody finds out Don's hunting on a property around here, they're looking for their way in the door as well. And, there's a lot of local hunters that like me a lot, and there's a lot that don't like me whatsoever. And most of the ones that don't like me whatsoever, there's a backstory there. And first of all, I don't think a lot of them really know me. If they did and understood how I try to treat other deer hunters, I think there would be a little more respect there. And I think a lot of it comes down to sheer jealousy. And, they think that I've accomplished something and they're just as good a deer hunter as me or whatever. Maybe I did it, some illegal, underhanded, dirty, unethical way to get where I'm at today. But, I really appreciate my true friends and those who have followed me and respect what I've tried to do. I've never been politically correct. You don't have to listen to this podcast but 3 minutes and figure that out. But I hope they see me as someone who stood up for what he believed in. And big deer were important to me, but they certainly weren't at the top of the list.
My legacy for Don Higgins? I think he's too humble. I think at the end of the day, if somebody has some time and they go out and watch a seminar he did at a church down in Effingham where he talks about reaching lost hunters, and I think it goes beyond just his faith and trying to, witness to people. It's to his fault he's too trusting and too good to people. And the more he gives, the more people crap on him all the time, and he still keeps giving. And that's I get so jaded. After a while, I'm like, quit doing that. They're just taking advantage of it. And he still looks for the good in people and tries to help them. So it's I think a kind of a role model for all of us, no matter whether it's deer hunting or your job, your hobby, whether you coach, whether you have kids, whether you work at a youth group with a church. Everything we do, you can look for opportunities to make a difference in someone else's life. And, you lead by serving. You don't lead by standing up in front and barking orders at it. You get in the trenches and you serve others. That's how you really lead. And whether it's the outdoor industry or he's lost more money in this industry than he's ever made just because of how he handles himself. He can't be bought and sold. If it's not something he believes in or he wants to do, he's not going to do it. Everybody else in this industry is just a total sellout. And that's coming from somebody who's been in this thing for 18 years. It's disgusting. But he always looks for the best in people. I think he's too humble. That's his legacy. Even if it costs him personally, he's always going to look for something better in someone else, that is. The mailman will probably agree with me on that, won't you?
I'm getting ready to. You made my day, Robin, by giving me this hat.
Oh, he's got his hat collection is complete.
Mr. Foster and I were just talking, and people don't know you. That's the problem. A big part of the problem. Jealousy is a huge part of it, but they don't know you. They haven't taken the time to get to know who Don Higgins is. They hear you on a podcast, and that's one thing, but they've never come up and talked to you or had a conversation outside of, whatever they've heard about you, or they probably don't even come to your face and ask you about what to hear either. And that's a huge part of the problem. And that gets under my skin because you've been nothing but nice to me. I put you on a buck that I had found out about, and Don asked me if I was going to hunt it, and I said I couldn't get permission. And he came 2 weeks later and got permission. Wasn't mad about it. I gave him the tip for it. And then, I just want you to know that it does come. I walked away from a piece of ground that I saw a stand with chains on it and our Connex trail cam looking over a spring. I think you know what piece of ground I'm talking about. And as soon as I saw it, I looked at it, saw the camera, I walked out because I knew you was there. So not everybody treats you like garbage.
A very good point. Yep, you did. I know exactly where you're talking about, and you told me about it right after you was there. But you are in the minority, and there is no doubt about that.
There's a ton of great people that support us. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
There's also some half socks out there that Wes Delks takes around when he needs some toilet paper. All right, are we getting wound down? Okay, we got a couple more.
It's just a short one, but I was wondering if the couple hundred rolls of toilet paper upstairs was for Wes Delks or for Terry Peer. There's all balanced up there. I thought maybe you were one of the hoarders in COVID. I didn't know, but
well, those guys spend a lot of time at our house, so we stay well stocked up on those things.
I told you earlier tonight, but that's what my wife thinks about when she thinks of the podcast.
I think she only walks in the room when when something's said about that. But those stacks of toilet paper have been in here as long as I've been sleeping in here, so they stocked up way before it was cool to do it during COVID. I can tell you that. All right. That was a pretty light question and answer, but we got the great segment from QuietKat that we aired. We appreciate Justin being here. What are we going to do tomorrow? This is going to be fun tomorrow.
It's going to be cold tomorrow, and it's going to be windy tomorrow. Yep. So I'm pretty sure the burn is out, but I think we're going to save the walks till after lunch because it'll be a little bit warmer then. I think it's supposed to get down to 20 tonight.
Robin has a really good food catered in for lunch, so we can eat a big lunch and then go for a walk instead of trying to take a nap like I did on Thursday.
Well, Thursday, we did the walks first because we had rain coming late morning and all afternoon. And I'm telling you, after lunch, and I'm sitting there giving my PowerPoint presentation, this is no joke. I was looking across the crowd, and it was one eye after another, just people dozing off. I think Joe was back there sleeping. Bruce was back there sleeping. You guys think I didn't see that? I seen that. Yeah. I put them to sleep.
Now you know how the preachers feel when you're back there nodding off and Robin's elbowing you after you've been up all morning hunting. So, all right. Well, we appreciate everybody's help. Great questions tonight. Next week we're going to be back on our regular show format, and the master classes are officially over. And why don't you explain real quick why we're most likely going to take a break on master classes, at least here at your home farm. We might do some remotes, but master classes on the home farm are suspended, at least temporarily.
Right. Yeah, I just acquired this winter another 40 acres that adjoins this property. We'll see it tomorrow on our tour. And there's a lot of work to do on that 40 acres. I'm going to put in some new grass walking paths for these classes in the future. But it's going to take me at least 1 year, if not 2 years, to get that new 40 acres developed and connected to this property the way I want it to. It's even going to change some things I'm doing on this property, this current property as well. So we're planning to take a year off and get all those projects done, and then when they're done, start back up again.
Yeah, but the remote master class was a big hit that we did at our friends Ray and Aiden up in northern Ohio, so we'll be looking for some consultant clients that we did projects on over the years that we think that a good remote master class closer to other people will come into play, but that's what's on the ticket for next year.
Right. Ray and Aiden have said that we're welcome to come back there, and we might do that again, next winter. But we'd like to go to different regions of the country to include people that don't want to travel, this far. So anybody listening that's a consulting client, if you got a property that you've set up with our plan and you're interested, we'd be interested in talking to you.
Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week on episode 162. Thanks for everything. We appreciate it.
God bless. Have a good week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, QuietKat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.